The sun hung low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the barren fields as he rode into the valley. Dust swirled around the worn wheels of his old wagon, and the wind carried the faint scent of pine and earth, sharp with the promise of something unknown. He had left behind the clamor of the town, the endless questions, and the weight of expectation, seeking a life that no one else dared to imagine. The abandoned farm sat at the edge of a forgotten ridge, its fences splintered and sagging, its barn leaning as if it had grown tired of standing. Most people would have turned away, muttering about the danger and the loneliness. But he saw opportunity where others saw decay. He stepped down from the wagon, boots crunching over dry, brittle grass, and surveyed the land. It was bigger than he remembered from old maps, stretching beyond the ridge in a patchwork of fields and meadows. The farmhouse itself was a skeleton of its former self, boards peeling from the walls, windows staring blankly like the eyes of a long-forgotten witness. He could feel the history of ITRs, of laughter and tears, of hard work and stubborn pride still clinging to the cracked wood and rusted hinges. There was something compelling about it, something that whispered that this place could become more than just shelter. It could become home. He pushed open the creaking gate and heard the metal groan in protest. Every step toward the house made the wind carry faint echoes, the kind that make a man second-guess his solitude. As he reached the porch, the boards underfoot threatened to give way, but he pressed on, running a hand along the warped railing. It smelled of earth and dust, of old wood and lost memories. Then, without warning, he froze. Voices came from inside the barn. They were soft, melodic, and somehow impossible in a place that had been abandoned for years. His brow furrowed, and he leaned closer to the half-open door. 3 figures moved within the shadows, their presence shocking in its vitality. They were unlike anyone he had ever seen, each carrying a distinct aura of strength and confidence. One had hair the color of midnight and eyes that seemed to catch the dim light like fire. Another had a cascade of sunlit gold that tumbled over her shoulders, and the third held herself with a quiet power, dark eyes scanning every corner, as if she knew every secret the farm held. He wanted to call out, to ask who they were, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he watched, heart hammering, as they moved about the barn with a practiced ease that suggested they belonged there more than he ever could. They laughed quietly at something only they understood, and he felt an unfamiliar tension knotting in his chest.
Yes.
They were beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. They carried an air of authority, of knowing, of secrets that dared him to discover them. A sudden shift in the wind sent the barn doors rattling, and one of the women glanced toward the sound, sharp eyes narrowing. It was the woman with the golden hair, and when she spoke, her voice was smooth and commanding, cutting through the air like a whip. "Who's there?" He swallowed and stepped forward, raising a hand in a gesture of peace. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said, voice steady, despite the thrum of adrenaline in his veins. "I just moved in, thought this farm was empty." There was a pause. Then laughter, not cruel, but amused, almost teasing. The woman with dark eyes tilted her head, regarding him with an intensity that made him feel both exposed and examined. "Empty?" she said, voice soft but edged with steel. "Must have walked past us without seeing this place. It has a way of hiding what it wants." He felt a flicker of unease. The farm had been abandoned, yes, but there was no denying the presence of these women. Something about the way they moved, the way they looked at him, made him question whether the farm itself had drawn them here, or if they had always belonged to this land, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. "I don't mean any trouble," he said, taking another cautious step forward. "I just want to make a life here, work the land, make it my own." The woman with midnight hair studied him closely, her expression unreadable. "Work the land?" she repeated. "You think you can take what has been left to the shadows? You might find it isn't as simple as planting seeds and waiting for rain." A chill ran down his spine. There was something in her tone that suggested history, that hinted at stories the walls of the farmhouse alone could not tell. Yet beneath that warning, he sensed a challenge, a test of resolve. He had faced hardship before, and he knew the meaning of perseverance. "I can do more than survive," he said. "I can make this place thrive." Another pause. The golden-haired woman stepped forward, brushing a strand of hair from her face, eyes sharp and calculating. "Many have tried," she said softly, "and many have left. This farm, It takes more than hands and heart. It asks for courage, for understanding. Are you ready for that? He hesitated, considering her words. There was an old, almost imperceptible power in this place, a pulse beneath the soil and timber that spoke to something deeper. He had come seeking solitude, but now he realized he had stumbled into a story far larger than himself, a story that involved not just the land, but these women, and perhaps even forces beyond understanding. The third woman, quiet until now, finally spoke. Her voice was calm, deliberate, carrying the weight of experience. "If you stay," she said, "you must know this. Nothing here is what it seems. You will be tested in ways you cannot imagine, and the farm will demand more than you think you can give." He felt the air thicken around him, the sky above the farm darkening as if sensing the tension. There was a moment, suspended in time, where every rustle of the leaves, every creak of the boards, every whisper of wind seemed to hold meaning. He knew that stepping forward was no longer a choice, but a challenge, a reckoning with the unknown. Finally he nodded, though his hands were tight at his sides and his heart thundered in his chest. "Then I accept," he said, voice firmer than he felt. "I don't know what I'm stepping into, but I won't turn back." The three women exchanged glances, and for a moment he thought he saw something like approval flicker in their eyes. Then the barn doors swung wider, revealing the shadows within, and the golden-haired woman smiled, a mix of warning and invitation. "Very well," she said. "Then let the farm show you what it has kept hidden, but beware. Once you cross that threshold, nothing will ever be the same." He swallowed again, stepping closer, drawn toward the mystery, toward the unknown promise of life and danger intertwined. The farmhouse waited, silent and expectant, and the women moved with him, surrounding him with an invisible gravity he could not resist. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and old soil, and he realized with a shiver that this was the beginning of something far larger than he had imagined, a story that would challenge everything he thought he knew about courage, survival, and the power of the land itself. And as he crossed the threshold into the dim light of the barn, he felt a sudden certainty. Nothing here was as it seemed. And the days to come would test not just his skill and will, but his heart. The farm had secrets, and the women, they were only the beginning. He stepped further into the barn, letting his eyes adjust to the dim light, and noticed the faint smell of hay mixed with something else, something almost sweet, like wildflowers long forgotten in the corners of the fields. The three women were moving deliberately, as if each action had purpose beyond mere survival. One swept a broom over a patch of dusty floor, another carefully arranged old crates, and the third traced her fingers along the wooden beams, her expression distant, almost reverent. He finally spoke, his voice breaking the silence that had settled like a thick fog. "I should probably introduce myself properly. My name is Thorn. I just inherited this place, I guess you could say. I didn't expect anyone to be here." The woman with midnight hair stopped and turned, her gaze piercing. "Inheriting it," she said slowly, "is different from claiming it. This land has a memory, Thorn. It remembers the ones who built it and the ones who were lost to it. Many who come here never understand that." He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words. There was a strange rhythm to the way she spoke, each syllable deliberate, carrying a sense of history he could almost touch. "Memory?" asked, I thought. "It was just an old farm. No one lived here for decades." Her lips curved faintly, not quite a smile, not quite a warning. "Decades," she echoed, "or maybe just long enough for people to forget the right way to respect it. You don't know this land yet, but it will teach you, and if you fail, it will take more than you can give." The golden-haired woman, who had been tidying crates, stepped closer to him. "It's not just the land, Thorn," she said softly, almost conspiratorially. "It's the people who are tied to it, those who lived here before. They left pieces of themselves behind, secrets, promises, unfinished business. We are the remnants, the ones who stayed behind to watch and wait, to guide or warn." Thorn's brow furrowed. "Remnants? You mean ghosts?" The woman with quiet, dark eyes shook her head slowly. "Not ghosts," she said. "Not quite. We're something else. Bound here, yes, but not in the way you imagine. You'll see eventually. But you need to understand the farm first. It has rules, ones you might not like. He felt a shiver run through him. The air in the barn seemed to thicken, charged with anticipation, and for a moment, he wondered if stepping into this place had been a mistake. Yet another part of him, the part that had always sought challenge, pushed forward. He wanted to know. He needed to know. "Then tell me," he said, his voice firmer this time. "Tell me the rules. If I'm going to stay here, I need to understand them." The woman with midnight hair considered him carefully, then gestured for him to follow. They walked toward the farmhouse, the boards groaning underfoot, the windows staring blankly at the world outside as if silently judging each step. The golden-haired woman lit a lantern, and the warm glow illuminated the cracked walls and faded wallpaper. Dust motes danced in the light, giving the air an almost magical quality, as if the past itself were floating around them. "This house," the dark-eyed woman began, "was built over 100 years ago by a family who believed in hard work, in resilience, and secrets. Every floorboard, every nail, every beam carries their intent. You might call it old, abandoned. But it is alive in ways most people would never understand. And those who disrespect it," she let the words hang, unspoken, yet heavy. Thorne swallowed, trying to absorb the enormity of what they were telling him. He had thought he was just inheriting property, land, a building. He had not expected lessons in legacy, in history, in the subtle currents that shaped the lives of those who came before him. "I'll respect it," he said quietly. "I'll learn." The golden-haired woman smiled faintly, a mixture of amusement and caution. "Learning is only the beginning. The farm doesn't just accept you because you want it to. It tests you, challenges you, and sometimes it punishes those who are unprepared. You may see things that don't make sense. You may hear voices in the wind. You may feel eyes watching from the shadows. Don't be afraid. But don't ignore them either." They moved into the main room of the house, and Thorne saw the remnants of lives once lived. Old furniture stood like silent sentinels, and shelves held cracked jars of preserves long forgotten. A fireplace sat cold and empty, the mantel lined with photographs yellowed by time. He felt an odd connection to this place, a pull that went beyond curiosity. He wanted to belong here, even though he knew that belonging came at a cost. The woman with midnight hair opened a small rusted chest in the corner. Inside lay papers, letters, journals, bound in cracked leather. She handed one to Thorne. "Start with this," she said. "Read it carefully. It'll tell you what you need to know. But remember, understanding the words is one thing. Understanding the meaning is another." Thorne took the journal, feeling its weight in his hands, and ran a finger over the worn cover. He could sense the history, the countless hands that had touched it before him. He opened it and began to read, skimming the first lines, feeling the pull of stories long buried beneath dust and time. Outside, the wind had picked up, rustling through the broken windows, making the house groan and sigh as if alive. Thorne looked up from the journal and saw the three women watching him, their expressions unreadable. He realized that they were not merely guides, they were guardians. And perhaps, in some way, the farm itself had chosen them for that role. The golden-haired woman spoke again, her voice breaking the silence. "As you should know," she said, "that the farm has its own way of testing courage. There are places here where the light doesn't reach, where the walls seem to breathe, and where the past lingers like a shadow you can't shake. Some who have tried to uncover its secrets never return the same. Some never returned at all." Thorne's pulse quickened. He had known challenges before, but there was something in her words that made him realize he was stepping into something far beyond ordinary labor, far beyond simple survival. This was a place where courage alone might not be enough, where wisdom, patience, and intuition mattered as much as strength. The dark-eyed woman moved closer, lowering her voice. "The land isn't just soil and timber," she said. "It's memory, it's intention. It's the living echo of everyone who has worked, fought, and dreamed here. If you listen, really listen, you might understand. And if you ignore it..." Thorne looked around the room again, at the faded photographs, the broken furniture, the dust dancing in the lantern light. He felt the weight of generations pressing down on him, but also a spark of possibility. This place could be more than a farm. It could be a home, a challenge, a story worth living. But even as he turned the pages of the journal, trying to absorb the lessons of the past, he felt it the subtle, almost imperceptible presence of something watching. something that wasn't one of the three women, something that moved in the spaces between shadows and light. He could not tell if it was friend or foe, guide or guardian, but he knew instinctively that it would be part of the tests to come. The golden-haired woman's eyes met his, sharp and knowing. "You've begun," she said, "but the farm, it has only just begun with you." He nodded, unable to speak, and felt the chill of anticipation settle in his bones.
Outside.
The wind howled through the broken boards of the barn, carrying with it the scent of earth, rain, and something indefinable, something that promised that the days ahead would not be easy, and the nights even less so. Thorn turned back to the journal, the flickering light casting shadows on the walls, and read on, feeling the farm's pulse echoing in his own heartbeat. He could not yet see the full story, could not yet understand the depth of the mystery he had stumbled into. But one thing was certain, his life had changed forever the moment he had crossed the threshold into the farmhouse, and the presence of the three women ensured that nothing would ever be simple again. He glanced toward the shadows at the edge of the room, aware that his human or otherwise watched him. The wind outside grew louder, the trees bending as if whispering secrets only they could understand. The farm was alive in ways he had yet to comprehend, and the questions that had begun in the barn now spread through the house like fire. And as he read, and as the three women silently observed him, Thorn felt the first stirrings of something far greater than fear or curiosity, recognition that he was part of a story much older than himself, one that would test him, challenge him, and perhaps define him. The journey had begun, but the destination remained unseen. The morning light filtered weakly through the broken windows, dust motes floating like tiny specters in the air. Thorn awoke on the creaking floorboards of the farmhouse, the journal he had read the night before resting by his side. His muscles ached from sleeping on the hard wood, but he felt no regret. Something about the night had sharpened his senses, made him aware that the farm itself was watching, waiting to see how he would move among its secrets. He rose, stretching, and peered through the cracked windows. The fields stretched beyond the ridge, brown and brittle from months of neglect. Yet there was a strange beauty in the untamed wilderness. Trees twisted in uneven patterns, shadows pooling at their roots. Somewhere in the distance, he thought he saw a movement, a flicker at the edge of the meadow, but when he blinked, it was gone. The three women were already stirring. The golden-haired woman, her name whispered in his mind as Solara moved toward the barn, checking the horses and old equipment. The woman with midnight hair, Vesper, tended to the garden, her hands deftly pruning and planting with practiced ease. The quiet one with dark, steady eyes, named Lyra, peered in the farmhouse doorway, watching Thorn with an unreadable expression. "You'll need to learn the land," Lyra said softly. "Every ridge, every hollow, every stream carries its own story. The farm is alive because of those who came before. Ignore it at your peril." Thorn nodded, feeling both exhilaration and unease. "I will," he said. "I want to understand it." Lyra's gaze softened slightly, though her warning lingered. "Then you should start with the barn. There's more than hay and tools in there. Some things were left behind for a reason." He followed her into the barn, and as his eyes adjusted again to the dim light, he saw that the shadows seemed deeper than before. Dust hung in the air, and the faint scent of wildflowers mingled with something metallic. Solara glanced up from the horses, giving him a cautious nod, while Vesper continued her work with quiet determination. Thorn approached a stack of old crates in the corner, noticing one that was newer than the others, as though it had been added recently. He knelt and lifted the lid, revealing old letters, maps, and a small, intricately carved wooden box. Inside the box lay a key, tarnished but unmistakably important. He held it in his palm, feeling the weight of its history. Before he could examine it further, Solara spoke, her voice low but commanding. "That key opens a door in the east wing, a door no one enters lightly. If you choose to use it, you must be ready for what waits behind it." Thorn looked at her, curiosity warring with caution. "What's behind it?" She shook her head. "Some things are not meant to be told. They must be discovered. That's the way of the farm. You will see soon enough." Vesper, who had been silent until now, added, "Not all who explore find what they seek. Some find more than they bargained for. Remember that, Thorn? The farm has a way of revealing truths that some are not prepared to face. The weight of their words pressed down on him, but he felt an unfamiliar determination rising. He had faced challenges before, but none like this. He was no stranger to hard work, to solitude, to danger, but the unknown that lay before him was different. It demanded more than strength. It demanded intuition, courage, and a willingness to accept that the world did not always follow reason. As he moved through the barn, he found more hints of the past. Old farming tools, rusted and worn, lay scattered across the floor. A weathered plow leaned against the wall, its wood cracked but solid. Animal pens, now empty, hinted at livestock once kept here. Beneath it all, in the quiet corners, were subtle signs that someone or something had been here not long ago. Footprints in dust, a half-filled water trough, a blanket folded neatly on a bale of hay. Thorn paused, listening. A faint whisper seemed to come from the far corner of the barn, almost like a sigh. He held his breath, his heart hammering, told himself it was the wind, the settling of old wood. The echoes of memory, but he could not shake the feeling that the barn itself had secrets it wanted him to uncover. He decided to explore the east wing, where Solara had indicated the key belonged. The farmhouse groaned as he moved through its corridors, each step stirring dust into the air. The walls were lined with faded wallpaper, peeling and yellowed with age, and old photographs stared back at him, faces frozen in time. Some were stern, some smiling, all of them carrying the weight of lives long past. The door he found was solid, made of thick oak, with iron hinges blackened by time. He held the key in his hand, hesitating for a moment, then slid it into the lock. The click echoed loudly, reverberating through the hall. With a deep breath, he turned the handle and pushed the door open. Inside, the room was dim, lit only by slivers of light filtering through cracks in the boarded-up windows. Dust motes swirled in the air like tiny dancers. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars, bottles, and books. Maps and charts were pinned haphazardly, some marked with strange symbols and notes in spidery handwriting. It felt like stepping into a place untouched for decades, a private world frozen in time. Thorn's eyes were drawn to a large table in the center of the room. On it lay a collection of items: a compass, a notebook filled with cryptic writing, a locket containing a faded photograph, and a small polished stone that seemed to hum faintly when he picked it up. He felt a sudden awareness, a sense that each item held a story, a secret, a warning. As he examined the notebook, he realized that it chronicled events that had occurred long before his arrival, tales of disputes over land. Mysterious disappearances, strange phenomena in the fields at night. One entry mentioned 3 women who were said to guard the farm, ensuring its secrets remained hidden from those unworthy. The descriptions matched Solara, Vesper, and Lyra almost exactly. A chill ran down his spine. The journal he had read the night before spoke of the farm's history, but this room, the East Wing, felt like the truth of it, raw and unfiltered. He'd stepped into the past, into a place where stories of ambition, greed, and courage were etched into every surface, and he knew instinctively that he was only at the beginning. Suddenly, the faint sound of movement outside the door drew his attention. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, froze, clutching the stone in his hand. A shadow passed across the threshold, and he felt a presence that was neither Solara, Vesper, nor Lyra. The air grew colder, heavier, as if the farm itself were holding its breath. Thorn stepped back, heart pounding, and the whispers began again, faint but unmistakable. He could not make out the words, yet they carried meaning, warning, guidance. The farm was alive in a way he could feel, a force that tested patience, courage, and perception. And the more he understood, the more he realized that the 3 women were not the only guardians of its secrets. He had entered the East Wing to learn, to explore, to uncover the past, but now he understood that the farm's present was equally complicated. Every choice he made, every step he took would ripple through the land, through the echoes of history, and through the lives tied to it. He was no longer just an inheritor of property. He was a participant in a story older than himself, one that demanded vigilance, cleverness, and heart. Thorn closed the door slowly, careful not to disturb anything further. He returned to the main hall, the 3 women waiting silently. Their eyes met his, unspoken questions passing between them. They knew what he had discovered, or at least suspected, and he sensed both approval and caution in their gaze. Lyra finally spoke. "The farm will show you more than you expected," she said quietly, "and the world beyond these walls will try to take that away. You must be ready for both." Thorn nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He was learning that survival here required more than skill with tools or hands in the soil. It required understanding, insight, and the courage to face the unknown. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of earth, rain, and something wild and untamed. The farm breathed around him, alive and mysterious. And Thorn realized that the challenges ahead would not only test his strength but his very understanding of what it meant to belong. The key to the East Wing, the shadows in the barn, the stories in the journals, all of it was a beginning, not a conclusion. And as he glanced toward Solara, Vesper, and Lyra, he understood something profound. The farm had chosen him, but it had not yet decided whether he was worthy. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, and prepared for the long path ahead. Whatever secrets the land held, whatever dangers lurked in the shadows, he would face them. Because to walk away now would be to ignore the call of the past, the present, and the unseen forces that bound the land. The women and him together. The farm was waiting, and the story was only beginning. The sun had dipped low behind the ridge, casting the farmhouse and fields in a long, trembling shadow. Thorn stood at the edge of the meadow, the journal clutched in one hand, the small stone he had found in the East Wing pressed in the other. The wind carried a low, mournful whistle, rattling the broken windows of the barn and rustling through the tall grass like a living thing. He could feel the pulse of the farm beneath his feet, steady and insistent, as if it were urging him forward, warning him, challenging him. Solara appeared first, moving silently through the tall grass, lantern in hand. Her golden hair glimmered faintly in the dying light. "The night is coming faster than usual," she said, her voice steady, but carrying the faint tremor of urgency. "The farm grows restless when darkness falls. Pay attention, Thorn. Every sound, every shadow could be telling you something." Vesper emerged next, her dark hair blending with the deepening dusk. She carried a bundle of supplies, lantern oil, rope, and what looked like an old map. Her eyes scanned the horizon constantly, alert, calculating. "You've learned much already," she said, "but tonight will test more than knowledge. The farm does not forgive carelessness. It exposes weakness, and it waits for hesitation." Lyra followed last, her quiet presence commanding attention even in the dim light. She stopped beside Thorn, her dark eyes fixed on him. "Remember what I told you," she said softly. "The land has memory, intention, and power. Tonight, all three will confront you, and the women you see here," she gestured to Solara and Vesper, "are only part of the Guardians. There are others' forces you cannot yet perceive." Thorn nodded, swallowing hard. He felt a mixture of anticipation and dread twisting in his chest. He had explored the East Wing, read the journals, and begun to understand the subtle currents that flowed through the land. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to come. They moved together toward the barn, the lanterns casting long, flickering shadows that danced across broken boards and splintered fences. The animals had been settled for the night, but the quiet was deceptive. Thorn sensed movement in the periphery of his vision, shadows that shifted too deliberately to be the wind. He tightened his grip on the stone, feeling its faint warmth pulsing like a heartbeat. Inside the barn, the air was thick with dust and the lingering scent of hay. Thorn's eyes adjusted to the dim glow of the lanterns, and he saw marks on the wooden walls, strange symbols etched deep into the beams, patterns that seemed to shift when he blinked. Solara and Vesper traced their fingers along some of them, murmuring under their breath, and Lyra stepped closer to Thorn. "You must understand," she said quietly, "these symbols are not merely decoration. They are warnings, protections, and records of what has occurred here. The farm speaks in many languages: wood, stone, wind, shadow. Listen, or you may regret it." Thorn nodded again, trying to absorb the meaning behind her words. He had always believed he understood hard work, struggle, and perseverance, but this was something different. Something beyond reason. He felt the land pressing in around him, alive in a way that made the hair on his neck rise. A sudden sound made him freeze, a low, rumbling growl coming from the far corner of the barn. The three women stiffened as well, and Thorn realized that it was not an animal he could recognize. The growl shifted, became a whisper, then a chorus of faint voices speaking words he could almost understand. The farm was waking. Solara stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "It's testing you," she said. "Not me, not Vesper, not Lyra. You." Thorn felt his heart hammering in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. He moved toward the corner, lantern held high, revealing a shadowed alcove where the outlines of old tools and stacked crates appeared. But something moved within that darkness, something that didn't belong. Lyra touched his arm lightly. "Do not fear it," she said, "but do not underestimate it. The land only accepts courage coupled with respect." He took a deep breath and stepped closer. The whispers grew louder, forming words that seemed familiar yet strange, like echoes of conversations long past. The air grew colder, and a mist began to rise from the floorboards, curling around their feet like living smoke. Thorn's stomach twisted, but he gripped the stone tighter, sensing that it was more than just an object. It was a key, a guide, a protector. Suddenly, one of the crates shifted, and Thorn jumped back instinctively. The shadow moved, coalescing into a vague human form. It was indistinct, shimmering like heat waves over summer pavement, but he could see the outline of a face, the faint glow of eyes. The whispers surged into a single voice, commanding and clear. "You should not be here." Vesper stepped forward, her presence steadying the air. "It recognizes your fear," she said, "but it does not act without reason. Stand firm." Thorn nodded, feeling a strange clarity cutting through his terror. He held the stone forward, letting its warmth spread through his hand, and took another step toward the shadow. The voice spoke again, softer this time. "Prove yourself, or leave." The three women exchanged glances, unspoken agreement passing between them. Thorn realized that he was alone in this moment, though their presence grounded him. The farm's true test had begun, and it demanded more than skill. More than courage, it demanded heart. He stepped fully into the alcove, letting the lantern light illuminate the shadow, flickered, then solidified, revealing an old figure, a man, weathered and worn, with eyes that carried decades of regret and determination. Thorn could feel the weight of the man's life pressing down, and the whispering voices of the farm seemed to settle around him like a storm waiting to break. "You seek to claim what was abandoned?" the figure said, voice trembling with both power and sorrow. "But do you understand what it costs?" Thorn swallowed, feeling the enormity of the moment. "I want to learn," he said. "I want to understand. I don't know what it costs yet, but I'll pay it." The figure studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Many have said the same," he said. "Few have endured. The farm is not gentle with ambition. It tests loyalty, wisdom, and heart. You will face what you fear most, and only then will the path forward appear." A gust of wind shook the barn, scattering dust and lantern light in chaotic swirls. The shadows deepened, and Thorn realized that the farm was alive in ways he had only glimpsed before. Doors slammed, floorboards creaked, and the faint whispering of voices swelled into a chorus that reverberated in his chest. He felt as if every moment of his life had led him to this point, every struggle, every ounce of determination. "Trust yourself," she said firmly. "The farm will guide you, if you do not falter." Vesper's gaze was steady, unwavering. "It is testing more than your courage," she said. "It tests your heart, your understanding, your willingness to see beyond the obvious." Lyra, silent until now, added, "And remember, what you face here will reach beyond these walls. The farm's echoes touch the world outside. Be vigilant, be mindful." Thorn felt a rush of fear and excitement in equal measure. The farm had revealed itself as more than land, more than history, more than memory. It was a living challenge, a puzzle, and a story, all at once. The shadows around him seemed to pulse, the air thick with anticipation. He realized that the climax was near, not yet reached, but approaching, each heartbeat carrying him closer to the test that would define everything. He clenched the stone in his hand, feeling its warmth spreading into his arm, his chest, and his mind. Whatever awaited him, whether specter, memory, or trial, he knew he could not turn back. The farm had chosen him, the women had guided him, and now it demanded proof. The old figure in the shadow lifted a hand, pointing toward the far end of the barn, where a trapdoor lay hidden beneath scattered straw. "Go," the man said. "Face what has been buried. The answers you seek, and the challenge you fear, are there. Thorn swallowed hard, stepping toward the trapdoor, the whispers now forming words of warning and encouragement simultaneously. He glanced at Solara, Vesper, and Lyra, who watched silently, each carrying a mixture of hope and caution in their eyes. The moment had come, the threshold of the climax, the point where his choices, courage, and heart would be tested in ways he had only imagined in fragments. He knelt and lifted the trapdoor, revealing a dark staircase that descended into the earth. The air smelled of soil and something older, something alive. The whispers surged once more, a wave of sound and meaning that wrapped around him like a living tide. He took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the farm beneath him, the presence of the 3 women behind him, and the weight of the unseen figures gaze upon him. With one final glance at the fading light above, Thorn stepped down into the darkness, the whispers closing around him, the unknown waiting, and the farm holding its breath. The night was only beginning. Thorn's boots hit the cold earth of the hidden chamber below, and he could feel the weight of the farm pressing in from above. The whispers had grown into a chorus of voices, some familiar, some strange, all urging him forward. His pulse hammered in his chest as he stepped carefully down the rough-hewn stairs, the lantern casting trembling light across the stone walls. Every shadow seemed to move, alive with intent, and the air smelled of soil, old wood, and something faintly sweet, like wildflowers buried long ago. At the bottom of the stairs, the chamber opened into a vast, dim space. The walls were lined with shelves filled with objects he didn't recognize, tools, jars, and carvings that seemed almost alive under the lantern light. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and upon it rested a leather-bound book, its cover etched with symbols that matched the ones he had seen in the barn. The stone in his hand vibrated faintly, as though responding to the presence of the book. Thorn approached cautiously, feeling the weight of generations pressing down on him. He could almost hear the heartbeat of the farm, slow and steady, demanding acknowledgement, respect, and understanding. When he opened the book, the pages were filled with meticulous handwriting, chronicling the lives of those who had once worked the land, their struggles, their triumphs, and their secrets. He realized that this was more than history. It was a record of everything the farm had endured, and everything it had required of those who lived upon it. As he read, a figure appeared from the shadows, a faint, glowing form of the man he had seen in the barn. "You have come far," the figure said, voice resonant yet gentle. "The farm has tested your courage, your heart, and your resolve. Few have walked these steps and faced what lies beneath. Few have learned what it means to truly belong here." Thorn lifted his gaze, meeting the figure's eyes. "I've tried," he said. "I don't know if I've done enough, but I've tried to understand, to respect this place." The figure nodded slowly, a faint smile breaking across his features. "That is enough. The farm does not demand perfection. It demands awareness, patience, and the willingness to face what is hidden. You have done that, and because of it, the farm and those tied to it will flourish once more." A soft light began to fill the chamber, radiating from the book and the pedestal. The shadows receded, the whispering voices quieted, and the air grew warm, as if the land itself were breathing a sigh of relief. Thorn could feel the energy of the farm shifting, the weight of the past blending with the promise of the future. Above, footsteps echoed. Solara, Vesper, and Lyra descended the stairs, their expressions a mix of awe and satisfaction. "You have done what we could not," Lyra said quietly, her dark eyes meeting his. "You have listened, and you have learned. The farm has chosen you as its steward." Solara placed a hand on his shoulder, golden hair catching the lantern light. "It is not just the land that is yours," she said. "It is the history, the secrets, and the responsibility. And it is not a burden, it is a gift. You have proven yourself worthy." Vesper stepped forward, her voice steady. "The shadows that lingered, the whispers that warned, the trials you faced, they were all necessary. You have faced them without flinching. That is what makes you ready." Thorn closed the book gently, feeling the warmth of the chamber seep into him. For the first time he felt a sense of peace, a connection to the land and its history that went beyond ownership or survival. He understood the farm's memory, its intention, and its power. He understood the responsibility that came with its hand. He was ready. Over the next days, Thorn worked alongside the three women, repairing fences, tending the fields, and restoring the farmhouse. The once abandoned farm began to show signs of life. The barn no longer echoed with ghostly whispers, but with the rhythm of activity, the sound of hooves on straw, tools against wood, and voices carried on the wind. Each action he took felt in harmony with the land, as though the farm itself approved of his efforts. The three women remained his guides, but their roles shifted. Solara, with her golden hair and commanding presence, became his teacher in patience and strategy, showing him how to read the land and anticipate its needs. Vesper, quiet yet unyielding, taught him the importance of precision and caution, guiding him through the subtle signals the farm offered. Lyra, steadfast and wise, remained the keeper of history, helping him understand the legacy he had inherited and the importance of honoring those who came before. One evening, as the sun set behind the ridge, Thorn stood on the porch of the farmhouse, looking out across the fields. The wind carried the faint scent of pine and earth, and the land seemed to hum beneath his feet. He felt a profound sense of accomplishment, yet he also knew that the farm story was ongoing. The challenges would not end, but now he had the knowledge, the guidance, and the courage to meet them. Solara joined him, her hand brushing lightly against his. "You've done more than survive," she said. "You've begun to thrive here, in the farm. It responds to that." Vesper came up behind them, carrying a basket of vegetables from the newly tended garden. "The work continues," she said. "But the hardest part is over. You've faced the shadows and the whispers, and you came through." Lyra appeared last, her eyes soft with approval. "And remember," she said, "the land, the farm, and those who live here are all connected. You are not alone. You never were." Thorn looked at the three women, the farm, and the rolling fields beyond. He felt a deep sense of belonging, a connection that transcended ownership or duty. He understood that the farm had chosen him not just to inhabit it, but to nurture it, to protect its history, and to guide its future. And he realized that the women had been more than guides, they had been part of the farm's own spirit, its guardians ensuring that he would rise to the challenge. Over the following weeks, life on the farm settled into a new rhythm. The farmhouse was restored, the fields yielded crops, and the animals thrived. Thorn continued to explore the east wing and the hidden chamber below, uncovering more of the farm's history and learning from it. Each discovery deepened his understanding and strengthened his bond with the land. The whispers that once haunted the barn were now faint echoes, reminders of lessons learned and trials overcome. The shadowed corners of the farm no longer seemed threatening but full of possibility, carrying the promise of growth and the legacy of those who had come before. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the fields gold, Thorn gathered with Solara, Vesper, and Lyra on the porch. The farm was alive around them, humming with the energy of past and present united. Thorn felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond satisfaction. It was a connection, a purpose, and a profound peace. "You've done it," Solara said softly. "You've taken what was abandoned and made it your own, not through force, but through understanding. That is what matters." Vesper nodded, her eyes reflecting the golden light. "The farm has accepted you, and in turn you've honored it. That is the greatest achievement." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and warm. "Remember this feeling," she said. "The farm will always challenge you, but it will also guide you. You've proven yourself worthy, and that is a gift few ever receive." Thorn smiled, looking out across the fields that stretched to the horizon. The wind carried the scent of earth and growth, and he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the farm, for the women who had guided him, and for the journey that had brought him here. He understood now that life was not about avoiding shadows or whispers, but about facing them with courage, respect, and heart. As night fell, the farmhouse glowed softly in the warm light of lanterns. The barn stood strong and alive, and the fields stretched wide and fertile. Thorn knew that challenges would come again, as they always do, but he was ready. The farm had chosen him, and he had chosen it in return. Together, they would endure, thrive, and carry the legacy forward. He took a deep breath, feeling the land's heartbeat beneath his feet, and knew that this was only the beginning of a life well lived. A story fully embraced, and a future rich with promise. The farm, the women, and the history intertwined, creating a bond that could not be broken. Thorn smiled, finally at peace, ready to face whatever the world and the farm would bring next. The abandoned farm was no longer abandoned. It was home.